Good vibrations. Jake drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, his vintage Volkswagen van chugging along the winding coastal highway. The California sun painted the sky in hues of pink and orange as it dipped towards the horizon. He'd been driving for hours, chasing a feeling he couldn't quite name. It had started that morning when he woke up feeling different. There was an electricity in the air, a tingling sensation that danced across his skin. Jake had always been sensitive to the world around him, picking up on energies and vibes others seemed to miss. But this was something new entirely. He'd called in sick to his job at the surf shop, much to the chagrin of his boss. But Jake knew he had to follow this feeling, wherever it might lead him. So he'd hopped in his van and drove north along the coast, windows down, and the salty breeze tousling his sandy hair. As the miles rolled by, the sensation grew more assertive. It was like a distant melody, just on the edge of hearing. Jake hummed along, though he couldn't quite grasp the tune. His body swayed with the rhythm of the road, a smile playing at the corners of his lips. The sun had nearly set when Jake spotted a small dirt road branching off from the highway. Without hesitation, he turned onto it, the van bouncing over the uneven terrain. The road wound through a dense grove of towering redwoods, their branches creating a canopy overhead that filtered the fading sunlight. After a few minutes, the trees opened up to reveal a small secluded cove. Jake's breath caught as he took in the scene before him. The beach was pristine, unmarred by footprints or debris. Waves lapped gently at the shore, their steady rhythm a soothing counterpoint to the buzzing energy building within him all day. Jake parked the van and stepped onto the sand, his bare feet sinking into the excellent grains. The sensation that had guided him all day reached a crescendo, and he felt his entire body vibrating in harmony with the world around him. As he stood there, bathed in the soft glow of twilight, Jake noticed movement at the water's edge. Squinting, he made out a figure emerging from the waves. It was a young woman, her long dark hair plastered to her shoulders as she walked towards the shore. She moved with an otherworldly grace, barely seeming to touch the water's surface. Jake's heart raced as the woman approached. There was something familiar about her, though he was sure they'd never met. She stopped a few feet away from him, a knowing smile on her lips. "I've been waiting for you," she said, her voice as melodic as the waves behind her. Jake opened his mouth to respond, but was at a loss for words. The woman laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a summer breeze. "My name is Harmony," she said, extending her hand. "And you're just in time for the gathering." Before Jake could ask what she meant, Harmony turned and gestured towards the far end of the beach. Jake saw dozens of people materializing on the sand, as if emerging from the air. They were an eclectic group, young and old, dressed in everything from flowing bohemian clothes to sleek modern attire. What is this?" Jake finally managed to ask. Harmony's eyes sparkled with amusement. "It's a celebration of connection, the energy that binds us together. You felt it today, didn't you? That's why you're here." Jake nodded slowly, realizing that the vibration he'd felt all day emanated from this very spot. Someone in the gathering crowd began to play a guitar, as if on cue. The gentle notes floated across the beach, and Jake instinctively swayed to the rhythm. Harmony took his hand, leading him towards the group. As they walked, more instruments joined, drums, a flute, even what sounded like a theremin. The music swelled, and Jake felt as though he could see the notes dancing in the air around them. The gathering welcomed Jake with open arms, as though they'd been expecting him all along. An older man with a long white beard pressed a tambourine into his hands, encouraging him to join in. Jake hesitated for only a moment, before giving in to the irresistible pull of the music. As the night wore on, Jake lost all sense of time. He danced and sang with strangers, who quickly became friends, sharing stories and laughter around a bonfire that seemed to burn with all the colors of the rainbow. The music never stopped, one song flowing seamlessly into the next, each tapping into a different aspect of the cosmic energy that pulsed through the cove. In quieter moments, Jake found himself drawn to Harmony. They walked along the water's edge, talking about everything and nothing. She told him about the gathering. It happened only once every few years when the Earth's vibrations aligned just right. "We're all sensitive to it in our ways," Harmony explained. "Some hear it as music, others feel it as a physical sensation. For some, it's a color or a taste. But we all know when it's time to come together." Jake nodded, thinking about the feeling that had driven him up the coast. "But why me? I've never experienced anything like this before." Harmony smiled, reaching out to touch his cheek gently. "The vibrations call to those who are ready to hear them. You've always had this sensitivity, Jake. You just needed the right moment to awaken it fully." As dawn began to break over the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant streaks of gold and pink, the gathering started to wind down. People hugged and exchanged contact information, promising to stay in touch until the next alignment brought them together. Jake felt sad as he realized it was time to leave. He turned to Harmony, wanting to ask for her number or email, some way to ensure this wasn't goodbye. But before he could speak, she pressed a small smooth stone into his palm. "For when you need to remember," she said softly. "The vibrations are always there, Jake. You'll never truly lose this connection now that you've awakened to them." She leaned in and kissed him gently on the cheek. Then, before Jake could react, Harmony turned and walked into the surf. He watched in amazement as she dove beneath the waves, her form shimmering momentarily before disappearing entirely. Jake stood there for a long time, the stone clutched tightly in his hand. Finally, as the last gathering dispersed, he returned to his van. The drive home was quiet, but Jake felt anything but empty. The night's energy thrummed through his veins, a constant reminder of the connection he'd discovered. In the weeks and months that followed, Jake's life transformed. He quit his job at the surf shop and started teaching meditation and energy work. He found himself attuned to the rhythms of the world in a way he'd never experienced before. Sometimes, when the moment was right, he could almost hear the distant strains of music from that magical night on the beach. The stone Harmony had given him sat on his bedside table. On nights when the outside world felt too chaotic or disconnected, Jake would hold it in his hand and close his eyes. Instantly, he'd be transported back to that cove, feeling the sand between his toes and the cosmic vibrations coursing through his body. Years passed, and while Jake never saw Harmony again, he felt her presence in every moment of synchronicity, every burst of inexplicable joy, every connection forged with a kindred spirit. He knew that someday, when the vibrations aligned just right, he'd find himself drawn back to that hidden cove. And Harmony would be there, emerging from the waves with that knowing smile, ready to dance once more to the universe's music. As Jake drifted off to sleep each night, he silently thanked whatever cosmic force had led him to turn off that highway on that fateful day. He had found his rhythm, his place in the grand symphony of existence. And as long as he kept his heart open to those good vibrations, he knew he'd never be alone.